So how to prepare my business for a GDPR compliance? Well, the first thing you have to do is do a data audit, which is what personal information does your company have and who have you shared it with? That's the first step. And so I'm sure that in itself is a pretty large project. I know we're doing a couple of these right now for companies to try to help them figure out where their CRM data is and what campaigns it was used, and did it actually get out of your organization. The second part is the software that you're using in compliance. So for example, here's a great example. If I'm using a CRM, and let's say I'm using Infor CRM, and someone requests their information be removed, and you go through and you blank out that information, because Infor has an audit trail called Track Changes, technically you're not in compliance because you'll actually be able to see that someone erased that data, but the old data is still in the system. This is part of the problem. So you need to make sure that your CRM and your marketing automation solution is GDPR compliant. Now, Salesforce and Microsoft today are GDPR compliant. Sugar is their spring release, which will come out in April, will be GDPR compliant, and the next release of Infor CRM is also GDPR compliant, and I have a BPM Online, which is another product we work with, is already GDPR compliant. And if you have a question about whether you're GDPR compliant, we'll help you research that. But that's something that you need to make sure that the software itself is compliant. Then you need to understand if your business is considered a controller or a processor or both. In other words, and if you do you need to hire what's called a data protection officer to ensure that your data is always staying in compliance? And then you have to put together a privacy by design plan. Now, what we're seeing a lot of folks do is they're building out customer portals that will notify their customers that they have personal information and allow them to remove that information. And there are now third-party companies, which we'll talk about a little later, that are coming into existence that'll help you manage that portal information. So the next thing we have to do is we need to put in place a procedure guide that will allow us to detect, report, and investigate any breaches. So you need to have that in place prior to a breach, otherwise you're going to have some issues with compliance. So you need to develop a documented process on how you're going to handle breaches. And then you need to provide your employees an understanding of what the compliance rules are once you have them for your organization. And then finally, you have to figure out and make permissible the use of data for people who are in the EU. So what do I have to do? Well, I'd say prepare now. You can come up with creative ways of doing sales and marketing. We're investigating, we're putting an emphasis this year on inbound marketing versus outbound marketing. By that I mean we are not doing as much outbound mailing lists, and we're also going through a process of asking everyone to re-opt into every mailing list that we have so that we can show traceability of people from the EU has opted in. We are not buying lists anymore. I think the days of buying lists should be over because you can't control them and you could be liable if the list has EU citizens. We are getting rid of any pre-checked boxes on our website. We're letting people opt in, and in fact, if people don't opt into a list, we only retain that information for a very short period of time. I believe the rule is 6 months. So if someone does opt in, you can keep it for 6 months. You can't actually do anything with it, but you can keep it for 6 months. But after 6 months, you have to get rid of it. So we're building systems for customers that'll help go through their information, categorize it as a lead that hasn't opted in, and building systems that'll help remove it. We are offering consent cookies on websites, so you have to, if you go to our website now, it'll immediately ask you if it's okay to drop a cookie, so that's you stay in compliance with EU. And then we're making sure that any software or third-party systems we're working with are also compliant. So we're making sure products like On24 and we use ActOn, those products have all maintained their compliance with GDPR as well.